Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here for this workshop, notwithstanding the strikes today. I hope you didn't have too much of a hard time coming on Lille. My name is Sébastien Vieux. I've been for a few years to Stormshield. I'm here with Pierre-Olivier Kaplan, who's the leader of our cell on cyber security and intelligence. We'll talk about our XDR Stormshield platform, which is a very fashionable term nowadays. And we'll try and talk about our vision of XDR in Stormshield. How do we conceive it and how? So obviously, we'll do a demonstration. We'll talk about some use cases. But first of all, why XDR? Why should we do XDR today? For Stormshield, we've always had a protection approach. So the most important for us is not to have an impact on a system during a cyber attack. So is to protect as best as we can and to prevent the attack to go all the way till the end, avoid vulnerabilities and phishing of data. That's really an analysis that's based on behavior, whether it's on the firewall or on the boxing center with all the IA on the files, whether it's protection of the machine with EDR or on all the threat intelligence pipelines. So only to protect, we all know it, protection in its absolute 100%. Well, the one who finds it, he will be really rich in cyber. We also have to be able to react when something takes place because the signals are not clear enough. Sometimes configurations are not well done on protection systems or other reasons. Attacks can go through. So obviously, there are sometimes when the protection is not the most efficient. For example, there might be a machine that is made a target. So obviously, there will be some attacks that will go through, even notwithstanding all our efforts. And we wanted to have a response to this. And we wanted to give our clients the ability not only to protect themselves, but also to react quickly with respect to heterogeneous systems and complex systems in addition to the protection itself. So how do we do this? We do it through this platform that uses all our products. I talked about it. Our firewall is an MBR, which is in audit mode. Our system protection is an EDR. Our boxing system is a file DR. And our intelligence system gives us a lot of data that allows us to detect. All of this, we will orchestrate it and enable it to work through our SLS, which allows us to monitor and manage the events, and will become a SOR at the end of the year. And we will manage different incidents, security incidents, through this solution. So it's best to have a demonstration instead of having a long speech. So let's go straight to the point with a specific case. It's a business called Incredible Data. It's an intelligent company with a portal that allows small companies and managers to input some data and to work with it. So it's very simple. We might have an MFA on the login. It's a Java element. It's a Java portal. The architecture is standard. This is the demonstration. On one side, the attacker, the social networks. Always important for the attackers to have a social networks to have basis for an attack. Then you have the NDR firewall, which is protected, which is perhaps not configured very well, be it between the Exchange server and the frontal server. On the server, you have EPP and EDR, and the management, XDR management. We haven't talked about SAS with all the elements. Here is the very simple architecture. Obviously, this is just a demo. This scenario here, we will have all the different steps of the attack. So the discovery collect a discovery, so looking for information on social media on the target. This is very important to have a quality attack, to have a scan, to see if there are any vulnerabilities, what is the system, what's its version, what we can use on it. Exploitation in itself of the vulnerability, it will be a log4 shell, which hasn't been corrected. Obviously, transferring some invasive tools of the hacker. Pierre-Olivier will talk about it, a small meta-exploit. Lateralization, which is really essential. Internal scan, what's in the network, what can be used. Finding a new vulnerability, Microsoft, because there are quite a few of them. Proxy logon. Deleting all the traces, it's always done in an attack. Exfiltration, always before encrypting, we have some exfiltration of data. And finally, execution. The cyber attacker will launch his attack, and it will go on the totality of the stations. And Pierre-Olivier, I will let you show us the dream. We go on the right screen with the video. Thank you, Sébastien. I suggest to do this APT attack together. We will follow the attacker through his eyes, but not only. We will also look at the administrator that through the XDR system will be able to receive the information immediately and apply the remediation. So here we have the initial situation. So the eyes of the attacker. The attacker was able to steal an email address of one of the employees of Incredible Data through the social networks, and he's discovering this web portal that is on the net. But you agree, Pierre-Olivier, he only copied the address, the email address, not the account. Yes, only the email address. So there he is. He's discovering the portal, and the first thing he will do is an automatic scan of vulnerabilities, and then we go to the serious stuff. Log4 shell, and he will try to activate it on the web server. He injects his command and attacks the server. And here the server responds. The server fell in the trap, and he has now hand on the server. Obviously, on the administrator side, we have received an email from the XDR saying that the system is compromised. So the administrator runs on the Stormshield log supervisor of XLS, and he will be here on the main dashboard. And on the left, he will have the confirmation that he has one serious event. And first of all, he will look at the main dashboards of SLS to review the recent security activity. So these are dashboards built on the alerts, on the firewalls and network activities, and on the workstations. So it will do its first revision. Then it will go in the incidents dashboards, and here you can see the incident. It says web server is compromised. That's it. It's there. And it's interesting because it can review the data of the incident, analyze them, and close them once the remediation has been done. So here, he will go analyze the data of this incident of the compromised web server, and he will access the following data. So what can we see here? On the left, first of all, you can see the source of the threat. So here is the IP address of the attacker. Then the score of the threat. Here it's very high. This is calculated on the severity of the alerts received, but it's also correlated with the engine of reputation that we have. So if the IP address of the attacker is known, this score will go up. And finally, on the right, you have a long list of alerts. These are linked to this incident in chronological order. And this is important because it allows the attacker to know what happened in... Not the attacker. Oh, yes, sorry. I'm sorry. The administrator. Yes, the attacker already knows what he's doing. Yes. So you can see this list is quite long. Why is it so long? Because if you remember, the first action of the attacker was to launch a scan of vulnerabilities. And this was detected. This launched a bunch of alerts. And if we go at the very bottom, you will find the log4shell. And here the administrator knows. He knows that his server has been compromised in this way. Very well. Now, before going in a remediation action, we will come back to our attacker. Our attacker was able to infiltrate with an account, and now he wants to go further. And to go further, he needs to import his own tools locally to use in his future exploitations. So he's using this software called Ragnar Locker. As you know, maybe it's a ransomware, and this is a real ransomware, and this will be very useful for later on. So we analyze the local network, we try to go beyond, we'll scan the ports of the machine, and we analyze the results. What do we see? We see interesting things here. We see LDAP, Kerberos, and it looks like a Windows machine and an Active Directory. So obviously it's a strategic server. Not only, there's also SMTP, IMAP, we think of messaging, perhaps Exchange. So it's a server that has several functions, a very bad practice, and it's very strategic, obviously. So it's very interesting for the attacker, especially because it's not up to date. Yes, it's true, it's not up to date. So this will be very useful for us because we will attack it using the vulnerability that targets Exchange, which is proxy urban. And it will use the tools that it brought already to try and exploit this proxy logon. It launches its tool, it's a very known tool, and it will choose the Metasploit, and it will choose the script that is corresponding to proxy logon. And he does that, and finally he configures his attack, and he puts in the IP address that will launch the attack, that will be attacked, and finally, for proxy logon, you need to have an email address of someone on the Exchange server. And wow, that works well, because you remember the attacker at the beginning had managed to find one of the email addresses of someone. So he uses the email address roger.latest@incredible-data.local. Everything is ready for our attack. So we launch it, and the attack is successful. We are now on the Windows server. Immediately, the attacker pushes the ransomware on it. Here, I remind you, we've only uploaded the ransomware. We will deploy it later. Then we delete the logs, we cover our traces, we use the tool weftutil that allows in Windows to cancel events in Windows. And finally, we'll try and steal some confidential data that we can use for blackmail or money or others. And we go into the full administrative folders, we go into documents, we have a look what's inside, and we see a folder that's called confidential. Looks very interesting. We'll look at it, and we see that there are several docx files, so this is very good. If you have topology.x, we take it, download it, and here immediately, for the poor administrator, there's a new alert, access to a forbidden file. So we will again analyze the details in XLS. Our alert appears here on the list of incidents that adds on to the list that we had before. And again, we will analyze here the data, and we'll see some new things. What do we see here? First of all, on the left, you see the host that has been affected. Here, it's a WinServer 2012. Again, the threat score very, very high here. If you look all the way on the right, we have the list of alarm alerts that correspond to this. The first one is the PowerShell code that was detected as malicious, and it's a proxy logon and its activity. Then we have on the next alert, we have the weftutil, and here the administrator sees, they're deleting the logs. And on the last alert, you see the theft of the file. PowerShell read the file topology.docx. So here the administrator knows what has been stolen and what has been affected. And he has all the information quite quickly. And the middle column, which is very interesting, is the strength of the correlation between the log SNS on the network side and the endpoint workstation side. Is we see the vector of how it's compromised. Sorry. Here we see the scan of the ports that have been done, and we find the proxy logon as well. And it's wonderful for the administrator because all the inquiry is already done. Everything's there. We don't need to go on each equipment to try and reconstitute the puzzle. And this is excellent for him so that he can remedy quite fast. And he can win some time. Yes, that's right. But before going to remediation, as you remember, the attacker had placed his ransomware on the machine. So the final step is to launch the ransomware. So he had placed the ransomware in the file directory, and he will connect again on his machine and give a last blow to incredible data. So the attacker here goes back to the root of the files, and he will launch ragnarlocker.exe, and it's done. And again, for the administrator, new alert with the data of the incident that we will analyze again. What do we see this time? Well, the host is still the same. The threat score is still the same one and very high. It's a ransomware. The compromission vector is the same as well because the path is the same. And finally, in terms of the alerts, the alarms, you have two that are linked to Ragnar Locker that has been detected by SES as dangerous and blocked. So at least we had this protection so that the ransomware cannot do too much. And here the administrator can proceed with the remediation. It will start, first of all, on the network side, on the SNS firewall, where it's connected, first of all, to limit the area of threat, its perimeter of action. So first of all, it was in NDR, and now it activates IPS, so that now the alarms can be reactivated and can detect Log4Shell, proxy logon, and scan for vulnerabilities and so on. Then we block the IP address of the attacker, which is quite classic, knowing that another solution can be to use the reputation IPs. If we know that this IP address already, we could use it like that as well. And finally, we isolate the compromised web server for two reasons. First of all, to prevent it to communicate with another server, and also to isolate it on the local network to limit the perimeter of damage. This was for the network. So here it's recreating the rule to isolate the compromised server. This is for the server. Then for the workstation, this will be for our SES system. So here what you can see, this is a Stormshield endpoint security. This is the element that pilots all the SES engines of the business. And from here, it will find in the SES alarms the one that is linked to the Ragnar Locker ransomware, and here create remediation tasks. The first one is to restore the shadow copies, because before being detected, the ransomware was able to detect to encrypt some of the files, but luckily we're able to restore them so the files are not lost. So it's not bad. Whew. And then we instruct all the workstations to scan the system and delete all files, ransomware files. And so we delete every trace of compromising on the local network. So we've created these tasks and we activate it. This takes us at the end of the remediation. Perhaps the last word. In the counter fight, there are three stages to find, isolate, and eliminate. And thanks to XDR, the administrator was able to do it. Sébastien, back to you. Thank you, Pierre-Olivier, for this demo, very full of teachings. So what did we see on this demo? we saw the first version of the XDR Stormshield XDR, because the second version, we will automate many of these answer response processes. Today you saw it manually, and tomorrow it will be automatic. Now, of course, be careful. For us in Stormshield, the automatic XDR was something we're against, but it can prepare it, but launching it has to be done manually by the administrator. Because if we start having automatic reactions, we'll have some bad automatic reactions. So never replace the administrator. We saw the threat intelligence. We didn't really see the sandboxing in this example because we didn't have files, but it's also something that can work. We have seen this first element. We saw the endpoint security and the network security to detect, to orchestrate. We saw XLS with the log stalking and the alerting. The processes and playbook are for the end of the year. The response part, we are obviously on the protection of assets through endpoint. We can isolate an asset automatically, delete some registry keys, delete some files, kill a process, and so on, and restore the shadow copies, which is really essential. On the network part, what can we do? We can geo-localize the IPs that are coming in. We can include IPs of a SOC in our solution. We can activate IPS signatures that the Stormshield team will have conceived as they have new critical detections, because most of them are detected and blocked by our pattern, but some of them are really subtle, so we continue working on this. And obviously, for a firewall, we can isolate assets. So this is the strategy for answer that we can suggest. What will we gain from this XDR process and solution? From a point of view of the final user, is the performance of the security, because it's security done by one and the same team. All these detection scenarios are done by the CTI team that is working on the SNS, on the CTI. It's a unified solution. Stormshield really is creating all these products, and these are developed coherent between them, and it can be integrated, because here we're talking about some kind of closed XDR, because these are our solutions in our platform, but all our products have open APIs, and they can be piloted by other XDR third-party solutions, for example, Sequoia or Logpoint or others, and they can be piloted by third-party solutions, and this is important. We have one solution, tailored solutions, but if you have another solution, you can pilot it through your existing XDR. And it's part of the cybersecurity response in front of threats, because we can't just play in our own field, and we have to play with open books. And then we have pre-organized scenarios with some use cases that are quite current in threats. For example, the malicious USB key. Obviously, we find them every day on the floor. Perhaps not every day, but we find them regularly, and they have Trojan, and the Trojan will contact the and command control to take over the asset. So we'll detect the fact that the USB key has been connected. There's a contact of the C2C. There's an abnormal behavior in terms of energy used, that we can isolate the process, kill the process. We can forbid this key, the USB key, on other machines so that it cannot be shared with other machines, so that its USB tag is forbidden, is blocked, its ID. This is for the USB part. We also have use cases of the web server that has a DDoS attack. So this was really network related, but it's interesting to write it down to see it, because we see there are some malicious IPs that are launch requests for the server. We see a burst in the SYN flood, for example, and we can respond and restrict the geographic IP and stop the malicious IPs. activate a specific QoS on the server to protect it. And by doing this, I respond on the long durability of the server, because this means that the server needs to be protected further. So we are on the virtuous circle of continuous improvement. Everything we do on the Stormshield solutions to protect and react, as they are protection solutions, that's what they're done for. So there's a capacity to configure that allows us to leave these responses not to be affected again in the same way. So we'll leave them afterwards. So that's a way that we're able to improve our security. Finally, bouncing back on the local network, a machine that comes to connect that is not allowed and try to scan and exploit vulnerability on machines, on servers. Once again, it will be detected because we'll be able to scan it. We'll see the attempts of scanning because we have Yara scans on EDR. So we will see all of this, and the response, you've understood it, will create isolation rules. It's more efficient instead of killing the machine. If it's not managed, it's a bit more difficult. We will isolate it, but if it's a compromised machine that was managed, we will be able to completely turn it off. I had a last one as well. I wanted to leave time for questions. This is on an emailing with malicious files. So depending on the messages that we receive on the emails that give information and allow to react. So perhaps this file, if it hasn't gone through the sandboxing, if someone was able to open it, we're able to detect it, we're able to react on all the machines, on all the firewalls, and then we're able to block it and kill it where it went through. So, in summary, it's a global solution that we really master in Stormshield, and we can provide different detection scenarios that are quite accurate that can protect European companies. Why European? Because it's a European XDR sovereign solution. Cyber efficiency, because we have a power of detection and response that we continue to keep through components that are made to interact with each other because they're made by the same company. I would like to finish with our XDR strategy. And do you have any questions, technical or less technical? Yes, so through the alarms, we have the information on which machine was compromised and who communicated with whom and how. Sorry, the interpreter cannot hear the questions. Then the next scenario is listed in chronological order. So all the elements of how it's compromised, it's listed there, and you have to just follow what is indicated. This way you can retrace back every step. Yes, that's it. So you can see what happened recently and how he got there. All the previous alarms as well that brought to this incident. If the attacker was able to encrypt the data and also was able to take some data that were on the server, what is the reaction how do we react to this? For the encryption of the data, the SES system is really looking on the attempts of eliminating shadow copies of the server, so it can block that, and from shadow copies you can then restore them. Then for theft, well, this is really a good example that shows that XDR it comes in addition to something else. It's not a solution for cyber attacks generally, because first of all you have to protect it, because if the data is stolen, well, that's it. That's where the impact is. So first of all, the information should be encrypted. That's why we have encryption solutions for folders and files, so that if they're stolen, they're unusable. But in this example of theft of data, if we weren't able to react faster, that's it. It's game over. There's nothing to be done. No, you should never pay for ransomware. Never pay. Can we launch a data encryption once you detect the first vulnerability automatically? It's a scenario that we've been thinking about, and from a technical point of view, today we can't do it, but tomorrow we will look into it and we'll do it, because as we have an encryption system, it would be a pity to not to be able to use it. It's a good question. No one else?
Oui, merci.
Yes, thank you. A small question. You said that you don't like to automate everything, but let's take the example that many attackers are waiting for Friday night when no one is in front of the computer to be able to have time to launch their attack. In that case, even though it's bleeping everywhere, how can we work against this attack? This is a risk you have to calculate. Either you choose to respond automatically that says, well, it's the weekend, no one is there, I have no production. For example, maybe you imagine that you have no activity on the weekend, and perhaps the simple reaction say, well, I close internet because I'm not using it. And all other cases where there is a risk, and if there's someone is there to supervise, then the administrator receives it he's on call, so he receives it on a cell phone. The alert on his cell phone. In terms of behavior analysis, I wanted to know if there's a time to learn for your system. Yes, there is an adaptation time, more in terms of configuration, but not learning. Other questions? With respect to this gentleman's question, can you, through the system, automatically cut the threat and prevent access, especially when you have a score that's 99 or 90 or so percent? Is it possible to automatically cut access to the attacker? As soon as the XOR version As soon as the version with the XR will come out, yes, it will be possible from a technical point of view. Then it's a matter of posture, but from technical point of view, it will be possible. What you have seen here is a completely manual remediation. So the administrator went on his equipment and assets and made the corrections. But obviously, this that we're looking to implement also completely automatic, that would fix itself, quote unquote. Yes? Yes, in that specific case, if the SNS detects obviously here the scores are very high because they're known threats. If we work with lower scores and threats, then the scores are lower. Yes, that's correct. You're right. A quick question. From the CTI on the PV, which is one of their major solutions, what do you use in terms of rules is it sigma base to block the PVI? Is it elements that allow you to detect and to block, or just to detect, or just to block? So this is our team that's working on this. We have quite a few sources that we keep on monitoring to detect issues faster. We have We have Yara, not Sigma. We have IUC also that we're collecting through our own feeds. But I'm afraid that we're up with the time, so I see people are leaving to go to other sessions. We'll close the session here. Thank you for having listened to us, and have a good FIC.